Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, March the 3rd, 2020. Madam Clerk, all the commissioners are here today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do have cell phones with you or any other devices, if you would turn those to silent for me, we would appreciate that. And if you are a speaker today, when you come up to the front, please mash the button to the right and activate the little red light on top. We would so appreciate that. Gentlemen, you've had a copy of the agenda. At this time, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you hear that motion by Wayne. All in favor, signify by raising the right hand. Madam Clerk, that will be 5-0. Moving with the first item on the agenda is presentations. From Caitlin Settlemyer, our Animal Services Director, our Pet of the Month. Caitlin, if you'll join us.
Thanks. So for March, we'll be presenting another cat and dog as the pets of the month to hopefully find their forever home. So far, we've found homes for all of our pets of the month. So it's been a really great thing to be able to bring them down here and let the community see them in person and get to know their personalities a little bit.
Can you tell us about your visit to Valdez with the pet?
Yes, we did take our first pet of the month to Valdez last night. It was an adventure. We took a very rambunctious pup who is in need of a very active family. It was Mr. Saint, but it was a really great time. I think everybody really enjoyed seeing a furry friend at one of those meetings. So.
Great. All right, gentlemen, any questions for Caitlin about our pet of the month? All right, we look forward to that. Thank you, ma'am. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on to item number 2, we are at this time going to get an update on the Burke County Rescue Squad, and that's going to be presented by Chris Brown, the Chief of the Burke County Rescue. Chief, if you'll come on up. Well, Mike, do we know anything?
No, sir, I sent him an email to make sure he had a date and time. I received a response back that he received it.
Okay, gentlemen, we do have some paperwork in here about some of the accomplishments of the Burke County Rescue Squad, some of the numbers in there. I just, without the chief here, I'm not going to highlight those. So, Mike, should we leave this on for a presentation or just go ahead and remove it? Do you think?
I would say, unless you have questions, probably remove it.
Gentlemen, I hope you've had time to look at this presentation. It was in our packet about some of the updates on the rescue squad. So without objection, I'm going to remove that from the agenda and just receive that report if it's okay. Anybody got any questions on that report that he turned in? All right. So here, Madam Clerk, if you will just go ahead and remove that from the agenda then. Moving on to item number 3 from our Finance Department will be the presentation of the fiscal year 18-19 audit. That's going to be presented by Margaret Pierce, our Deputy County Manager, Finance Director, and representatives from Louder Milk and Church. Margaret, gentlemen, if y'all can come on up also. Go ahead and activate that microphone there and kind of set it in between you so we can get you on speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm going to turn this over to Phil Church and Rick Hammer as our auditors to present their findings and their report of everything they explored to you gentlemen and be available to assist if there's any questions.
Gentlemen.
Chairman, Commissioners, good to be with you this afternoon. I'm going to make a couple of quick comments and then turn it over to Rick Hammer. He was actually in charge of the audit and probably knows more about the details than I might. But as we go along, ask us questions. If you have a question, we'll be glad to try to answer it for you. We did give you a clean, unmodified opinion, which of course is what you want. And the report has gone to the Local Government Commission for their approval, and they've approved it. You also had what we call an A-133 audit, which you have all the federal and state monies you receive. And we did a lot of compliance work in those areas and a clean, unmodified on those monies also. We did give you you do have highlights. This, of course, is what we're going to go over because the report is about 115 pages that would take a while. So as we go through, stop us, we'll try to answer it. If we can't answer it, maybe Ms. Pierce can help us out a little bit. So, Rick, you want to go over the numbers?
Sure.
Rick, slide that microphone just a little bit.
Slide over.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see on the highlight sheet, there's a 2019 column for the current year, audit year, and then a 2018, just to give you an idea of changes between the 2 years. The top portion is the general fund, or your main operating fund. At June 30, you had cash and investments of $26,713,854 and total assets of $32,910,721. Your unassigned fund balance, which is what's available, was $16,987,127, and you had total revenue of $79,492,889, and total expenditures of just over $81 million for the year. You had some transfers in of just under $4 million from other funds. So you had a increase in the fund balance there of 2.4, and I think most of that was due to unfunded capital projects at the end of the year that hadn't been completed yet. You also had some ad valorem taxes that are included in the revenue number. The current year levy, you collected $45,988,431, which was about 98.2% of the total levy. And investment income for the year in the general fund was $626,920. What the switch? I got the wrong sheet here. Okay. The next area is your proprietary fund. This is the water and sewer fund and your waste collection and disposal funds. Cash and investments in these funds totaled $2,434,620. Total assets, which includes all your infrastructure and equipment and everything netted depreciation, was $20,789,300. So your equity or your net position in the proprietary funds at the end of June was just under $14 million. You took in $6.9 million in operating revenues, and your operating expense for the year was $7,514,475. You had some non-operating revenues, which were mainly some federal grant monies, was $160,257. And you transferred out to other funds just over $98,000. So there was a decrease in your net position, and those funds combined was $538,043 for the year. And included in the asset number that I mentioned earlier, we always break out the receivables just to give you an idea of what's uncollected as far as the revenues. You had $678,356 in receivables at the end of June. And then you had some investment income of about $32,000 in those funds. And the last portion is all the other funds. We just sort of combine them together to give you an idea of other amounts. Cash and investments and all the other funds was about $15 million at the end of June. And you still had some cash with the physical agent from bond proceeds that were unused of about $7 million at the end of June. Total assets, $26,191,074, and your fund balance and all the other governmental funds was $24,173,419. Total revenues, just under $15 million in those funds, and you expended out $25 million. A lot of that was your capital projects, your jail project, and some others. And then you transferred out about $3.8 million to the general fund, which mostly came from sales tax funds. So in those funds combined, you had a decrease of about $14 million in your fund balance for those funds. The second sheet, which I didn't send with the highlight or send originally, but I brought today with me, was the fund balance available. That we always try to give you an idea of where you stand. This is just for your general fund only. You had unassigned fund balance of $16,987,127, and when you divide that over your expenditures and transfers out, of about 84 million. You have a unassigned fund balance percentage of 20.17% at the end of June. And then we also give you the state average for counties of your size was 37.72 at the end of June.
All right, gentlemen, any questions for Rick at this point?
Just for point of clarity, for folks watching, if they're wondering what's the difference between the unassigned fund balance and the general fund balance, can you give a brief explanation?
So you have you have a total fund balance, which is, your assets minus your liabilities. But then there's certain things like the state doesn't let you spend certain monies. There's certain projects you've already assigned money to. So you have to subtract all that out to get to your unassigned fund balance. And that's really what's available to be used.
Sure.
Yep.
And I see that went up over 1% so far this past, or up to 2019 over 2018, the unassigned fund balance.
The percentage, right, yeah.
Yeah.
A little over 1%.
So that's a positive. Anyway, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, my computer is not cooperating today for some reason. Anyhow, I wanted to, it mentions death benefit in there, and I've meant to ask this question a couple of years and forget to do it. We always spend the money out for it, but I never see where it's applied back. And I don't guess that's a process of yours. I don't know, but I don't see, I know we got people that, all of us are gonna die one day. So, I know we have people that pass away, but how does that, do we ever show where we pay that out?
The death benefit, I think that's done by the state.
Yeah, the state does that.
That's part of the state calculation of the actuarial stuff. So, I mean, I guess it's figured in there somewhere into what you have to pay each year, but I don't know if you actually pay it out directly.
Right, I think if I understand which section you're asking about, part of our state retirement plan, the local government retirement plan that we pay into.
We pay $25,000 plus a year into the death benefit for the employees.
Yes, sir.
And my question is, I know it's used sometime, but when and how, and we don't ever get a report, and I don't guess it's necessary, but I just wonder how
The county, right, the county doesn't pay that out. It would come from the Orbit system, the local government retirement system at the state. So we wouldn't ever see what dollars are paid out particularly on that. It's a benefit offered as part of our retirement system plan.
All right, would like to call your attention to page 68. I think it's 68, mine's not going to 68. Come on, computer. Anyhow, it alludes to the jail and the construction costs. And we're getting different numbers and accusations, et cetera, and we can't seem to get a single number. You're showing that figure at 24 million, I believe 100,000 and change. Is that correct?
I mean, I'm showing total expenditures on the jail.
He's talking about the revenue.
Oh, the revenue.
You're talking about the revenue, 24
Well,
million.
both revenue and the expenses right below it, both of them come out to
That's the budget.
23 million. No, we're
The
showing-
budget is 24,106,000. The budget is 24,106,000.
You've only spent 6,332,000.
No, it's about 18 million.
I mean, 18,903,000, I'm sorry.
At the end of June, you'd spent almost 19
Is that an
million.
accurate figure is my question.
At the end of June, it was,
At the end of
yes.
June, yes.
So we have allocated either through indebtedness or whatever, 24,100,000 and change.
That's the budget, yes.
That's the budget amount, yes. That's the budget.
Why the difference?
Well, this was as of June 30th, and the project wasn't complete yet, so I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen any numbers since June 30th to know what's been spent, so.
Well, I just, you know, I can tell anybody that's the number that it include, that we have thus far spent on the construction of the jail. And that construction means any landscaping, any architect, any, as you've got it down there, is that correct?
Yes,
That's all I need
the
to know.
18,903.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Any other questions or comments?
There's one other letter that we have called the letter to governance, and what that's usually trying to allude to, sorry, I forget about this, allude to is, do we have any problems with management in preparing the audit and getting things together? And no, things went very well. We had a lot of assistance, and we appreciate all the help.
Last comment, Johnny, was that 18 million or the 24 million? You said 18 million at the
Okay.
end, but
Okay.
what
The
is
revenue-
the true figure on that?
The revenues coming in was 24,465,612. Money spent so far is 18,903,313
At the end of June.
at the end of June.
At the end of June.
Yes.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Do you have anything else, Margaret?
I was just gonna mention, if there are no other questions, would it be possible to move it to consent?
Gentlemen?
Could I ask one more question?
Sure.
Margaret, did you have the final figure on that yet, or on the jail? I mean, they only have it through June. Do you have the figure up right to now?
No, sir, there are still invoices coming in and finalization going on. However, it will not be over budget,
And budget is?
24,106,000.
And that's a big question. We keep telling people it's 22, cost is 22, and you're telling me the budget's 24?
The loan was for 20 million, and you had premium on that loan. The contract for construction, I believe, was 22 million. Is that what you're talking about? The project budget hasn't changed. It's been 24,106,000 for the past 2 years.
Do you ever remember voting for a $24 million budget?
No, I don't.
How'd we get
I thought
24?
we were around 21 million. Supposed to be.
The 21, the building price budget, Wayne, was 21,965 on that same page.
We're talking about total price.
The total budget's the 24,106 that Margaret has told.
That's the number we're talking about.
And that's a
We didn't vote
different
for
number from
24.
actually what we've borrowed.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? All right, here, okay, gentlemen. Margaret has asked for this to be moved to the consent agenda. Any objection moving it to the consent agenda?
I personally do. I think there might be questions asked that night. I think we should leave it on the regular agenda.
All right, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda for presentation. Gentlemen, you will have to be here again on that Tuesday night for presentation, okay? All right, thank you, sir. All right, moving on to our scheduled public hearings. So first one will be from the Advisory Board, Animal Advisory Board, ordinance amending Chapter 6, Animals Code of Ordinances, and public hearing. That will be presented by Debbie Hawkins, our AAB Chair. Debbie?
Good afternoon. Thank you. The Animal Advisory Board has been meeting for several months, and during our meetings have discussed a number of questions that have come up regarding the animal ordinance. Based on that, we have made some recommendations, which I believe you have a copy of. So Let me start by saying within the animal ordinance, it says the overarching goal of our animal ordinance is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the county residents and the animals residing within the county, regulate and control the conduct, keeping and care of those animals, facilitate as many responsible lifetime adoptions of abandoned pets as possible, and encourage the reuniting of owners to their impounded animals. The first recommendation we've made is to add to our definition section under section 6-1 the word consult with the definition of means to discuss with and reach a decision. Consult needs to be defined and should be a collaboration between animal control and animal services. We're also recommending adding the standards of care, which is an owner, keeper, or temporary owner of an animal is required to provide their animals with humane care and treatment as follows: access to adequate supply of fresh air, species-specific food, clean container of fresh water, daily exercise, especially if using a tether to avoid any unwanted behaviors, shelter as defined in this ordinance, access to shade from direct sunlight at all times, and that's large enough for each outdoor pet at one time, and veterinary care when needed to prevent suffering. We feel the standards of care need to be in the ordinance because it gives clear direction to animal owners and enforcement officers of what is expected when you have an animal. The standards of care can easily be referenced and encompass the entire document. You don't have to dig through pages of wordy jargon to find out what a person should be doing when it comes to taking care of their animals. It also gives clear direction for when a citation may be in order when there's a violation. We're also recommending under 6-2, authority and purpose, general duties of animal control, a better delineation between animal services and animal control. We've recommended changing the wording to animal control officers will collaborate with the animal services director each workday to determine space availability. When space is limited, animal control officers can then place greater emphasis on owner education and owner retention, with the primary goal being to not impound and euthanize healthy animals for space. Prior to the impoundment of strays, animals at large, which references another section, animal control officers shall determine if the animal has a rabies tag, an identification tag, or scan for a microchip. If the animal has any of the above, the animal control officer will contact the owner of the animal and return the animal to the owner, educate the owner and issue a citation to the owner for a violation of this ordinance. If the animal has none of the above, the animal control officer shall conduct a neighborhood canvass to see if anyone recognizes the animal, knows the owner. If the owner is known or address is obtained, the officer shall attempt to return the animal to that address, educate the owner, or educate and issue a warning for a violation of the ordinance. If the owner is not home, the animal control officer shall leave notice at the residence stating the kind and type of animal seized, the place where the animal is to be impounded, the hours it may be reclaimed, and the length of time it is to be held. Nationwide best practice currently supports educating animal owners in the field rather than impounding an animal when possible. The goal is to have coordination of the current status of the population at animal services and prioritize the needs of what's in the field. Burke County needs to move forward to focus on owner responsibility, owner retention, and the live release rate at our Animal Services Center. By educating the owner on the ordinance in the field and reinforcing this with a citation and minimizing the numbers impounded, the responsibility goes to the owner and not on the animal. Excuse me. Reducing the number of animals impounded by returning those identifiable to their owner in the field, we could reduce the risk of exposure to disease, prevent unnecessary overcrowding, eliminate unnecessary expense to the county, and prevent unnecessary trauma to the animal for being impounded and killing for space. Providing education and even issuing a citation in the field could help improve the well-being of an animal and ultimately avoid pursuing legal charges. A couple of weeks ago, Animal Services had 9 dogs returned to their owners. One owner recognized the other animals and knew the owners. The impoundment of these dogs could possibly have been avoided had there been an attempt to locate the owners while in the field. We're also recommending a change to 6-2C. County Animal Services Center is a public shelter operated on a managed intake basis and must be in compliance with all state standards established for public shelters. Owners who wish to surrender their animal must contact Animal Services and schedule an appointment. Animal Services and Animal Control tasks need to be separate entities, although they should be working in unison. The current paragraph that we have in our ordinance now lumps the two together. We're also recommending a change to 6-2D. County Animal Control will only respond to citizen calls regarding a resident's report of suspected violation of the standards of care, a violation of the animal ordinance, a suspected case of animal cruelty, when an animal is in severe distress, or when the animal's death appears imminent. Deleting the sentence that allows an owner to surrender their animal not in distress to animal control again puts responsibility back on the owner by requiring them to make an appointment with Animal Services. This also gives Animal Services staff the opportunity to share strategies to help keep the animal in its home, problem-solve issues, and connect the owner with community resources. This also supports Animal Services by allowing them to prioritize admissions for those animals who are in distress. We're also recommending a change to 6-2E, which falls in line with 6-2D. It shall be the duty of the County Animal Control Division to keep or cause to be kept and submit to Animal Services staff accurate, detailed records, including but not limited to citations issued for violations of this ordinance prior to the impoundment of all animals coming into the Animal Services Center. Bite cases, violations, and complaints of investigation of the same, all other records deemed necessary. And then on to 6-2F, it shall be the duty of the County Animal Services employees to keep or cause to be accurate and detailed records of the status and disposition of all animals housed at the Animal Services Center. Again, this delineates duties of animal control and animal services, allowing for a smoother transition from the field to the Animal Services Center. Provides accurate documentation so that Animal Services can respond to calls from citizens, and it reinforces education and owner retention. The next section we are recommending a change is to section 6-77 under rescue requirements and audits. We are recommending changing quarterly audits to just say random audits. And that's to evaluate the health and welfare of the animals as determined by the Animal Advisory Board, striking the documentation that was listed before, which gives us more flexibility on requesting documentation from the rescues and others. We're also recommending adding a number 7, in addition to auditing approved rescues. The Animal Advisory Board will perform random audits on records from Burke County Animal Control and Burke County Animal Services. The Animal Advisory Board's primary mission is to advocate for the humane treatment of companion animals. This means in the field with our officers when they are brought to Animal Services and placed in their care and transferred to animal groups. The next section we are asking a recommendation for to change is under the remedies. As we've indicated prior in one of our recommendations, listing a first offense as a warning and then moving all the other offenses down as they were listed before. So the second offense would be the $50, third offense would be $100, fourth offense $200, and all other offenses after the fourth would be $200. The last section we're asking for consideration on is Article 3, which is impoundment, and this is to be in compliance with all of our previous recommendations. We're asking it to state, any animal which appears to be lost, stray, unwanted, which is found not wearing a valid rabies vaccination tag as required by state law or this chapter, and not under restraint in violation of this chapter, may be seized by the Animal Control Division in a humane manner only after conducting a neighborhood canvass. And that is referencing Burke County Animal Ordinance Section 6-2B4. If no owner is located, the animal may be impounded. These recommendations to the animal ordinance are to help citizens of Burke County know and understand what the expectations are when caring for an animal. Unless they're in the ordinance, we cannot expect our citizens to be aware. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard David's presentation. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I kind of appreciate the leniency toward that first offense and then second one, but I will say this, Debbie, I don't know how you're gonna do it. You're gonna need a Philadelphia lawyer to transfer and decide who's guilty and who's not guilty in some of those situations, but, my hat's off to you. But I have no questions about the article itself, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, that last one, Betty, that you discussed, was it in here? Did I overlook it somewhere?
6-71, general regulation of common article 3 at the top.
Debbie, why don't you read that just a quick, just for my, because you've done a really good job, y'all have done a great job here, but going from quarterly to random, how do we ensure that it doesn't go, you don't go 8 months without checking anybody?
You obviously don't know this animal advisory board.
But you see what I'm saying, it's not
Yeah.
written in here, so that would be a question that.
Yeah, the reason
you
why
know,
we wanted to change it just to random is because that gives us the flexibility to do it more often. Because what we're finding is several rescues can pull, and if we're only doing quarterly, then we're 3 months behind already. So if we can do more frequently, then we can find more of a present-day account of where the animal is.
Okay. And that makes sense. Just out of curiosity, how many approved rescue groups do we have now?
Caitlin? Approved rescue groups pulling?
14? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
Could that be reworded rather than random to add some phrase in there, not less than, or something to kind of,
That's,
Not less than,
to give a catch so that we don't wind up just randomly forgetting to do it when some other animal advisory board is in place.
that was what I was thinking, Jeff. That's a good point. I was thinking not less than just whatever number that is, just so we do have some guarantee.
security, okay.
Do you gentlemen have a suggestion on not less than?
Would 6 months be too onerous, or would?
I would say not less than quarterly. You don't want to go less than that. I mean, every 3 months is out there. That's why we were thinking more like random. But, I mean, that would give you some flexibility to not have to do monthly. So not less than quarterly, or not, how would you word that?
Not more than.
Not more than.
But that's the only tweak I had. I think the rest of it was, you know, no other questions. Thank you.
Debbie, is in the Article 3, only after conducting a neighborhood canvass, is that doable all the time?
I'm not an animal control officer, but in reading other counties and other areas' ordinances, this is one of the best practice wordings that they've used, is to canvass the neighborhood, and it's actually in the state statute, it talks about canvassing the neighborhood when it comes to doing rabies checks. So, it's part of the responsibility.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, there's a few things in B4 where you have the 3 separate lists of A, B, and C items. In both B and C, your employee is given the option to educate the owner or educate the owner and issue a citation. That's in the first part. And in the second part, it's to educate the owner or educate and issue a warning for violation of this ordinance. I think you're running into constitutional problems if if your employee has the ability to do both without any standards. In other words, why would one person just get an education and another person get an education and a citation? I think something needs to be spelled out there in order to prevent a claim of unequal enforcement under the law. And the same would go in the second set there. And the other question that I had, and that is $677, number 7, allowing an advisory board to audit our county employees. I think that's I think that has some real problems in that I don't know of any other advisory board that has the ability to be able to look at what the employees are doing and then I guess issue a report or tell the county commissioners or whatever. But I think you could be playing with fire with that provision in case there develops some problem between the advisory board and the county employees. I just caution the board about adopting anything that gives an advisory board the ability to audit county employees' work.
All right, gentlemen, hearing some recommendations from our county attorney, do you have any other comments or questions? Gentlemen, not hearing any other questions or comments, there are some, I feel like some major issues that JR has brought up that need to be addressed. And I would rather they be addressed, Debbie, if you would sit down with the county attorney and go back over the entire document, I believe, and see if there's anything else that may need to be done. But I don't want that to come back to us in 2 weeks. I don't think there's enough time for us to take a look at it again. So I'm going to ask that you, if the other gentleman will agree with me, that you take this back. Let's do a little bit more work on it with the county attorney and the county manager and with Caitlin. Let's look at some of those issues that are in there and readdress and reword and bring that back to us one more time, please, ma'am. Gentlemen, do y'all have anybody disagree with us doing that? Okay, let's do that, okay? All right, let's this, Madam Clerk, if you will take that off, we'll send that. Yes, ma'am.
Question, Mr. Chairman. I have a public hearing scheduled. Do you want to cancel that if I can?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We have time, don't we?
Maybe. I'll send an email right now.
If you do it today. Okay. Yes, let's do that, because there's just too much in here that needs to be looked at and get advice from the county attorney and the county manager before we set that out there for a public hearing. Okay? Please do that. All right. Okay, Debbie, I think that's where we're at, okay? All right. Thank you so much for the hard work you've done on this, for the good work. Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Item number 1 is a request for approval of a lease purchase agreement between Home Trust Bank and Iker Township Fire and Rescue Incorporated, and that will be presented by Mike Willis, Fire Marshal, and Brand Lingerfeld, Chief, down at Iker. Gentlemen, or maybe not Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'll let Iker's board member.
Good evening. Todd Eckert, Chairman of the Board, Iker Township Fire Rescue Department. What we're looking to do is purchase a replacement truck for a 30-year-old engine we have right now. The agreement that we're looking at will be a 5-year loan. This will be a low-interest loan. Annual payments run about $87,200 annually. We have had our public meeting, which was on January the 27th, 2020. At that time, we had 20 resident freeholders on hand present with a unanimous vote to secure the loan. We did our News Herald notice, placed in the paper twice, 11/24/19 and also 12/1/19 for our public meeting. On this purchase, we are looking to have a down payment of $200,000, possibly $300,000 as a down payment. Do you have any questions?
All right, gentlemen, any further presentations? Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, how many miles is on that 30-year-old truck? That was one of my questions. How old was the truck? But you answered it in your presentation.
At this time, I'm not sure. Chief, you know?
We'll average 2,000 miles a year.
Yeah.
Average what?
2,000 miles per year is an average.
So
So
it
you're
only
looking
has-
close to 60.
It's got 60,000 miles.
Yes, sir.
Does it need replacing?
Yes.
Is there improvements, or what would be the number reason to replace it? Just to say, excuse me, I'm answering my own question. What would be the number one?
The biggest thing when you get in that old apparatus, just like your family car, not only do bearings and brakes and drive line, but we have pumps. We've got large fittings, pipe packings. They go bad. Your compartments that are on these vehicles that run, short distances a lot, get broken, damaged, shook loose. It can get to the point to where it will not operate correctly, and it could be unsafe, both for driver operator and or the situation we're going to, structure fire or whatever.
What is the value of your truck you're trading in, and is the company willing to do a trade, or do you have it sold to another fire department?
At this time, this will not be traded in, and the value on this truck, I do not know exactly, but they do not hold a high value. In the past, what we end up doing is either donating to another department in the area that needs it, or selling it to replenish what little bit of money we can obtain from it.
Well, there's got to be a market for it, isn't it? A pump truck?
Not a 30-year-old truck. You can imagine, or the use, I'm not going to say abuse, but the use of an emergency vehicle on a daily basis. We run 1,700 calls a year. Divide that by 365 days a year. You can imagine how many times that truck goes in and out. If you took your family car to compare a family sedan to an emergency vehicle, you're looking at 3 million miles because of the wear and tear, fatigue on the frame and all that. So there's not a big demand for an older piece of equipment.
I don't guess they offered or wanted to trade with you?
No, they have no use for it. It's going to cost too much to refurbish the unit to put it back to where someone could use it safely. That's where we're at.
Is there an outlet that you can sell it?
Yes, we'll find a way to sell it. Or if there is a local department that has a use for it, we could donate to them in the county. All that'll be decided after a new truck comes in, put in service, everything's done, then it'll go to our board. We'll decide what to do with that truck at that time.
How long is the wheelbase?
On the new one or the old one?
Oh,
I want to say 112, but I ain't gonna swear to it.
112?
112 inches. It's a short truck. The old one's a short truck.
It wouldn't work. Thank you. I had an idea. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, moving on to item number 2 is also a request for approval of a lease purchase agreement between Home Trust Bank and Oak Hill Fire and Rescue Protection Association Incorporated, to be presented by Mike Willis, Fire Marshal, and Jimmy Winters, Chief. Hello, Chief. Go ahead, sir.
So we're going to replace a 40-year-old water haul, we call it a tanker apparatus, with a new vehicle. We've already purchased the cab and chassis. It's being built. We wanted to finance part of the cost, which is like, I think you have that $345,000. So we're just borrowing $208,000 for 5 years. And it's a good rate. It's like 2.3.
All right, any questions or comments from Chief?
Mr. Chairman, I did have a question about a typo, I believe, but it seems like we have 2 firms listed on that contract. I assume if I ask the same questions, I get the same answers about. Is that correct?
Probably.
Yeah, I figured it. I believe we had two banks mentioned, 2 loan and service.
It was the same bank. It should be the same bank.
Home Trust.
Hang on just a minute while Commissioner Taylor looks.
It may not have been on the contract, but on the description. It had the same bank, but it had reference to another one. I should have highlighted it, and I didn't. It's all right, I'll find it and call the clerk, and she can correct it, if that's okay, yes.
I think you'll see it on the loan process, maybe it's what you're talking about, Mayor. It says, talks about through United Financial.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know that has any bearing on the subject.
In the court of law, it should match, or you're in trouble. And hopefully nobody ever gets in the court of law. But it probably needs, I'm sure it's just an oversight, but both of them need to have the same name of the firm that they're borrowing the money from.
You're just borrowing from one bank, correct?
I think it's the same group. I'm not sure. They may have like a sub-branch or something that does just fire.
Home Trust Bank, that's the one you're working with? Okay. The only one you're working with?
Yep.
Okay.
This was in the minutes, it appears, synopsis of the minutes of their meeting.
Okay.
You see what we're talking about, Jeff?
Yeah. Where is it mentioned United Financial?
Yeah.
What is United Financial?
That was a subgroup at one time of the same company, my understanding. It's like the bunch that sells the fire, does the financing to the fire departments. We've had a loan with them before. We just paid it off a year ago this February for about 10 years. So they've been a good group to work with.
That was it, Jeff.
JR, you see anything there that looks
It says
different?
the adoption of the resolution, which is about as important as the contract. Says the incumbency certificate and corporate resolution as required by United Financial was presented and request for adoption was made. And it shows that the adoption, that they approved it, but you might want to get that to match the language is all. Just, it's the safest bet at least.
Is that your recommendation, JR?
For our purposes, it makes no difference.
For us, it makes no difference, okay. Take care of yourselves, gentlemen, okay? All right, any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. All right, moving on to our next item, gentlemen, is our Board of Commissioners proclamation declaring Youth and Government Day. As you already know, the month of April is designated as National County Government Month throughout the United States of America, and for the past 20 years, as part of our participation in this annual event, students from our area high schools have been invited to spend a day with us touring county government facilities, and that includes Burke Middle College, Halliburton Academy, and the Burke County Home School Educator Group this year. Extension Director Spring Williams-Byrd has agreed again this year to facilitate this event, and the board is asked to select a date for Youth and Government Day, taking the school academic calendar and Mrs. Bird's availability into account. It looks like Kay has proposed April the 30th for us. So if no one has any other obligations on April the 30th, we can go ahead and declare that day. Please check your calendars right quick, if you will, for April 30th. Let's take just a moment to look at that so we can be absolutely sure. Anybody with any other obligations on April the 30th? Okay. All right, hearing none, without objection, Kay, we will designate April 30th, 2020 as our selected date as Youth and Government Day in Burke County and adopt that proclamation. Okay. Sir?
At your upcoming meeting.
At our upcoming
On the
meeting, yes. That's what we'll do at our upcoming meeting. Thank you. So without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda where we will at that day do what I just said. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 4 from Madam Clerk is the appointment and removals to the Recreation Commission. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to hopefully make some appointments to the Recreation Board, but it's mostly removals. It also includes a creation of a new seat. Seat number 13 is for the new Mountain View Elementary School, and an application from Jessica Wisnett was received. The 3-year term would end March 31st, 2023. For Forest Hill, seat number 1, we're requesting that Brad Clark's removal be approved. His unexpired term ends March 31st, 2021, and I do not have any applications on file for this seat at this time. Seat number 2 for Glen Alpin is vacant, and that term ends March 31st, 2022. No applications on file. Seat number 3, Drexel, is vacant, but we are expecting an application from Lisa Butler. I have not received it as of today, and that term also ends March 31st, 2022. Seat number 4 represents Valdez Rutherford College. It's occupied by Doug Knight. He is willing to serve another term. I spoke with him by phone and again last night at the Valdez Town Council meeting, and he will be getting his application in. So he'll be renewing for another 3-year term ending March 31st, 2023. Seat number 5, George Hildebrand, is vacant. There are no applications on file, and that term ends March 31st, 2021. Seat number 6, Hildebrand Eichard, was occupied by Tim Limbo. However, he has moved and we need a replacement for this seat. That term expires at the end of March, but we do not have any applications on file for that seat. Seat number 7, W.A. Young, is occupied by Jason Black. His term is not expired, so we're not asking any action on his seat. Seat number 8, Ray Childers, is occupied by Justin Widener. we're asking that he be removed for attendance, and that term also ends at the end of March. There are no applications on file for this seat. Seat number 9, Mole, was occupied by Tamala Agnor until her recent resignation. Her term ends March 31st, 2021. I do not have any applications on file for this seat. Seat number 10 represents Oak Hill. It's occupied by Mo Beam. His term ends March 31st, 2022. We're not asking for any action on his seat at this time. Seat number 11 represents Salem, is occupied by Brandon Klontz. He is willing to serve another term. According to the recreation staff, I have not received his application, and he would be reappointed for a 3-year term if we get his application. Of course, seat number 12 is the commissioner's seat. We don't need any action there. We've advertised a couple times in the News Herald, and we've announced those vacancies numerous times. So if you could help us beat the bushes, that would be appreciated, because we need to fill some seats on the Recreation Commission.
Questions or comments for Kay?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Clerk or Brian, would it be possible to ask maybe somebody in our recreation staff to make an appeal? I think each of these schools probably have some semblance of an athletic association. If we could appeal to those associations and to try to find somebody.
Commissioner Benton, I have been working with the Recreation Director to get applications. Don't have any, but we will try again.
Mr. Chairman, I assume, Scott, it's a very active association, but to those 2 that you listed may serve, you just don't have the application, we're not breaking any rules or procedure to ask you or either, the name left me just that fast, the director to make calls and remind them to send an application so that they can be on that.
Right. We're reminding, and if by the time of your meeting we don't have anything, I will change the requested action.
Okay. It's just a very, they accomplish a lot with just a couple of people, so, and most of it is volunteerism. So be good to get them going if we can.
And as you said, Jeff, it's been tough to recruit. Treg's been very active on the recruitment part. I mean, he literally beats the bushes. This has been a continual problem for an extended period of time. And a lot of times we don't have a quorum. And so it's very frustrating. So, we'll just keep making mass appeals, because even though, a lot of folks are invested in the youth sports, it's the time. And we may have to actually maybe explore changing the time we meet, because it's at lunch and a lot of folks work, and it's tough to get down to foothills in the middle of the day. So I'll talk to Treg about that to see if they've ever had, and Maynard, you may know before this, but as far as I know, been on there, it's always been at lunch. And so I don't know if that change would help. It might be something we can explore.
Well, I was going to make the comment that at one time there was a request to change the time, but I would suggest that you just take a poll and see if there'd be more participation if you moved it to 9 o'clock or later in the day when people off work. It does interrupt your day. Now, I know I've had to leave the tractor sitting in the field making hay and run for that meeting when I was on that board. So it might help if you change the time for that meeting. But it would be my advice, I'd let the poll decide that decision.
Sure.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda with maybe possible changes when we hear from Kay. All right, moving on, item number 5 is from Madam Clerk, is the Board of Health removal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to remove Michelle Freeman, seat number 5 on the Board of Health. She has missed some meetings due to her employment. She's a realtor, and I guess business is good, and she resigned in December. We do not have any applications on file at this time for this seat, which can be an optometrist or a private citizen.
That one can be either or? Okay. All right, any other questions or comments from Kay about this item? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will also remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 6 from Madam Clerk is the North Carolina Department of Transportation Secondary Roads Resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a routine request that we do every couple years to re-adopt the resolution in the packet, just so they have a current one on file. There's no change to the language. It just reaffirms what we've been doing with secondary roads.
Questions or comments, gentlemen? Okay, without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 7 from the county manager is in regards to sheriff's vehicle lease with the town of Hildebrand. County manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We've received a request from the town of Hildebrand regarding their wanting to get a new car and replace the one they have. I believe the town manager is here. If you have any questions of him, and the county attorney, I believe, has overlooked the documentation for this. I believe there were some revisions, and then I believe I saw something here in the past few days about something on Exhibit A was needed to be changed, and I believe that had to do with a flashlight or something or another.
Minor request.
Okay, yeah.
JR, give us an update on what some of your changes were, if any.
They were basically to.
Mic on.
They were basically to clean up a little of the language from the original agreement was from 2008, I believe, and just to specify that the car is only can only be used for law enforcement purposes.
And Mr. City Manager, you have any comments or anything?
At this time, no.
Gentlemen, questions or comments?
The question is, present and going to be traded in, John?
So we lease the vehicle out to the county, but from my understanding, it's the county's ability to purchase that vehicle back from us at the end of the lease. We have not heard yet whether or not the county anticipates to purchase that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to welcome Mr. Shook. I did not get a chance to speak with him. I didn't know you, so I didn't recognize your face, and just wanted to welcome you. And
maybe I apologize. Go ahead, because some people haven't met you yet. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the board and to the audience out here, and tell them how many weeks you've been working.
I have not been working as long as my hairline's been gone. I can say that. Everyone here seems to have a full head of hair. But no, I've been
What's your name first?
Logan Shook.
Logan
Shook,
okay.
yes. And so I started out as town manager with the town of Cages Mountain. I was there 4.5 years, and then in July I was lucky enough to start with the town of Hildebrand. I don't know how many weeks that is. But yes.
Well, we appreciate that and welcome aboard, and I know Hildebrand's glad to have you down there. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, not hearing any objections or anything, that item will remain on our consent item agenda. We thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 8 from the county manager is regarding project The Nest, a public-private partnership for a wedding and conference venue at Fauntleroy County Park, and I will turn that over to Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You know, I was out some in December for a family matter, but we've had some time to look at this proposal for the letter of intent, and it is my opinion after that this is not in a circumstance that we need to go forward with in regards to the Nest. I think if we are presented with some sort of letter of intent for a smaller type of activity of some kind of log cabins or yurks, that's something that the board would probably want to take a look at and just take tiny steps instead of big leaps, especially as it would require significant funding from the county. I don't believe we are ready to do that at this point in time, so I think the recommendation is that we just, no further action regarding the nest.
All right, gentlemen, questions for the county manager?
Mr. Chairman, I heard Mr. Brown's recommendation. There's three things that I kind of asked when we had this on our agenda before, and one of the big ones we never did get an answer on, and I felt like the design of that building and so much glass that stick out like a gold ring in a hayfield or something, but it would not, and also I didn't like the idea of $100 a year lease. It just seems too, but more than that, what I really wanted was somebody, and I guess that'd have been you, Scott, to tell those people how much out of code he was with that design, and let them make the decision whether or not they wanted to change their building to match what we want for that area, or, you know, and come back to us. I don't know if that's acceptable or not, but I really don't want to see us walk away from $4.4 million if we can somehow rearrange, redo, and get a building that would fit the codes for that. You'd still have the obligation of, well, objection would be a better word, objection of us having to build a road and pave it. That's considerable, $600,000-700,000. Is it more than that? Well, anyhow, but I did want to welcome at least the chance for him to say, okay, redo this and show us how we can let you spend your $4.4 million. That was my comments.
Any other comments?
And I agree with Brian here. I think, you know, with the infrastructure outlay from the county and a lot of variables that haven't been really cleaned up since we first looked at it, I agree that, you know, putting this to the side at this point is the right call. And I will make a comment as we move forward. I would like for us to make sure we keep in touch with our community partners on if and when we do move forward with something, because obviously there was a lot of input from the community, and I want to make sure they continue to have that input so they feel like part of the decision, because I don't want to make a decision that 50 years from now I'm going to regret. So I think slow and steady's the way to go right now, and I'm not against development. I just want to make sure we're cautious, and like I said, make sure we have all the community partners involved in the decisions kind of moving forward.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, my comment was not just limited to that. I don't know if Alan would do that or who would do it, but I just need somebody to say, okay, that won't work. Can we show you another piece of property that will work, or whatever? You just don't, I wouldn't drop $4.4 million just that fast. I'd give them choices 1, 2, or 3, see if one would fit. You won't know until you ask. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other comments? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Okay. Moving on to item number 9 is a resolution granting the county manager authorization to reduce or waive animal services fees, presented by County Manager Brian Steen. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I believe our services director, as well as maybe even the advisory board, is concerned about the potential for our facility to be overcrowded, overwhelmed with kitten and puppy season coming up. They are wanting to have kind of a pressure relief valve, I'm going to call it, by allowing me to reduce adoption fees if the board is so inclined, so that we could maybe get some animals adopted rather than having to euthanize them. Again, I don't know if you've had a chance to read through this thoroughly. That's, to me, is the gist of it. And I don't know if Debbie or anybody else would care to expound on that, but that's kind of the short story of that.
All right, gentlemen, questions or comments for the county manager?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with the concept of it. I do think it causes some problems when people think they get cheated when they have to pay the full price, et cetera, et cetera. But I like the market demand approach, and I would probably move it one step higher. I would probably form it into a code that, on occasions when we just have nowhere to put animals, you can put them on sale at a reduced price so that nobody gets caught. And, in occasions when, and we never know when you may be out of town, somebody else can step up and make that decision. But I think we ought to have a policy on that, because if the policy is printed and it's well reversed and told and promoted, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you don't promote it and do it right, it'll bite you in behind it, excuse me, ladies, if you don't watch it, so.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the only question that's kind of come to mind, that this last sentence, a waiver of animal services fees shall be temporary and shall cease when the shelter is at or below 50% capacity. Are we ever at or below 50% capacity, Mr. Manager?
I think they've had some times, they had a weekend a while back, I think they adopted out 17 animals in one weekend.
Caitlin, come on up a minute, please, ma'am. Did you hear the question that Commissioner Taylor asked? Could you kind of expound upon that?
Yeah, this last sentence, Caitlin says, a waiver of animal services fees shall be temporary and shall cease when the shelter is at or below 50% capacity, when the event prompting the waiver has ended, or when illness or disease no longer pose a threat. I mean, that seems like a pretty low point. I mean, are we ever at 50%? Or how often are we at 50%?
I would say we are rarely at 50% with the size of the shelter we have currently. We normally stay pretty full, given the amount of strays and stuff we take in with the size of shelter we currently have. I would say we're probably close to 90% capacity majority of the time.
Well, I guess my point being, are we going to be waiving fees all the time? I mean, is that where we want to go with this?
No, I don't foresee us waiving fees all the time. There are, times where, we're pushing 3 and 4 dogs per kennel. Those are the times that we would be like, hey, can we run an adoption event this weekend to see if we can move some of these cats and kittens or, dogs and puppies out. It would be like I would foresee a set time, like a weekend special, maybe even a week special, given kitten season is upon us. So I think there would be an end point that we would have to cut that off.
So maybe some other criteria you might want to use, I don't know, but just throw that out for whatever it's worth.
So Jeff, are you suggesting we can't control this? Is that, I'm kind of losing my train of thought.
Well, if we base, I think what I'm hearing Caitlin saying is, maybe what I'm thinking is definition of capacity, and what you're thinking of definition of capacity is maybe two different things. Your capacity is when you've got 2 or 3 animals in a kennel, and maybe that's 3 times capacity. I don't know what that is, but so maybe we just need to be careful with the wording here, so that somebody can't literally say, well, you ought to be running a waiver all the time. So I don't know how you define it better, but that's your area.
Yeah, and I don't know if they can go back in the wording, say, if they are at or above, or it's imminent that they would be above 95% capacity, that the manager would have authority for a period of time to try to help us get animals adopted. So I think we can modify that to something the board may be a little more comfortable with. We'll try to get that out before the end of this week.
Let's not get it out before the end of this week. Let's go back and take a look at it and put it on next month. Okay? What do we got?
Spring breeding season.
Mr. Chairman, comment that Brian made, there needs to be some variables in that policy, because you can be at 80% and the weather hotter than ridiculous, et cetera, and have just as much demand as you would if you was 100% at much cooler temperatures. But there's a judgment call on that and you better be prepared for the judgment call and the response you're going to get if some people don't like it.
Agree. So if we wait till next month, you thinking we're waiting too long? All right, you got 1 week to come up with something, okay? And get it back to this Board of Commissioners, to each and every one of us, with the explanation of something new that we can take a look at, and then we'll look at it for our regular meeting on Tuesday. Wait a minute.
And also, there may be constitutional problems with waiving fees. I need to look into that a little further.
And consult with the county attorney in the next week while you're doing this to make sure we don't violate the Constitution, right?
With North Carolina Constitution.
North Carolina Constitution. Is that the only thing that you see is some constitutional issues?
Right.
Okay, yes, sir.
Also be good to maybe steal a good idea from somebody else. Maybe somebody's got one. Won't have to work so hard.
Steal what you can, Commissioner Taylor says, okay?
This was stolen.
Oh, this is already stolen, sir, so we'll steal some more. All right, JR, if you'll stay, Caitlin, stay in consultation, let's have that as soon as we can, okay? All right, well, so without objection, we'll leave it on the consent item agenda with the hope that some changes will be to us for us to read, and then if you have any questions that, please let me know. All right, moving on to item number 10 from the county manager also is a resolution supporting establishment of an animal services foundation. Mr. County Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. There was some discussion in the past few weeks. We're looking at the potential of a new shelter that's quite a significant cost, but the shelter is also experiencing needs now, and there may be a way that a foundation, if one was so created, could be of assistance and help take some of the cost and burden off taxpayers and really have people who are truly interested in the well-being of animals to help. There are a lot of people with very large hearts that would, if given an opportunity in a proper format, would be willing to donate monies to help the shelter work that we are all very passionate about. So this is merely a resolution in support of that establishing at some point in time outside of county staff.
All right, gentlemen, questions or comments? I will note that the Animal Advisory Board has unanimously voted to recommend that we adopt this resolution in support of establishing a animal services foundation to help with future costs. So any questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 11 from the Fire Marshals, appointment to the Local Emergency Planning Committee, and that will be presented by Mike Willis, our Fire Marshal. You ready, Mike? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I had a delayed conference call there.
No problem.
Which one you want first?
The Planning Committee itself, appointment to the Planning Committee.
Gotcha. Most of you know Paul Phillips retired from the hospital back in December, and the retired Chief Morgan and Public Safety, Ronnie Rector, has taken his position and has agreed to finish out Paul's term. So we would like to formally appoint him to that committee if possible.
Questions for Mike on this appointment? Hearing none without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving into item number 12 is also the LEPC new bylaws. Mike?
Yes, sir. We needed to update these to be able to expand our committee just a little bit. We had a specific number of participants on our board, and we needed to make that a little bit more flexible. So we included language in there to expand and contract the board as needed based on the needs of the county at the time.
Questions for Mike on this change to the bylaws of the Emergency Planning Committee? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to item number 13 of the Health Board, the Harbor Lead Grant Contract Approval, and that will be presented by Lisa Moore, our health educator from the Health Department. Lisa?
Good afternoon. So I'm here to present the service contracts for the approval of the newly funded Harbor Lead grant that we got from the Department of Justice. The contracts will allow our community agencies to provide the services within the grant requirements. Contracts are from Burke Recovery, the Cognitive Connection, Burke United Christian Ministries, and Catawba Valley Behavioral Health. They have been submitted for services for a 36-month grant period from October 2019 to September 2022. After the grant was awarded, BJA asked us for a revised budget. So we have submitted that revised budget about 2.5 weeks ago, and we have not gotten a final line item budget yet. But to keep this project moving forward, we need to go ahead and try to secure these contracts as approved, contingent upon the county attorney being able to look at these contracts, and also contingent upon what BJA sends us back with a revised final budget. We're asking for approval of the service contracts as follows, and that would be Burke Recovery for $336,747, the Cognitive Connection for $119,920, Burke United Christian Ministries for $73,215, Catawba Valley Behavioral Health for $48,801. All those are subject to review and/or revision by the county manager, the county attorney, and the final budget from the Department of Justice. We're also asking that you approve and authorize the county manager to execute the agreements on behalf of the board and to revise any of those amounts for those contracts as needed when we get that final budget.
All right, Jim, you've heard Lisa's presentation. Any comments or questions?
Lisa, I do have one. I noticed you mentioned Catawba Valley Mental Health.
Behavioral health, yes, sir.
Behavioral health, okay.
That is the agency that employs our lead, our law enforcement assisted diversion program case manager. So
Well,
it would have to be for their salary.
It's a different entity. Since they were, I thought maybe Catawba Mental Health was part of the partners' help, that maybe we could get some for Burke too. So that was the reason for the question.
Well, they service Burke and Catawba counties for those clients in mental health and behavioral health. So yes, sir, you are correct, but they do service Burke County.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, sir. Other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Lisa. All right, moving on to our tax report. We have a number of those. Let's start out with our tax collection report for February 2020, and that will be presented by Danny Eisenhower, our tax administrator. Danny?
Afternoon, gentlemen. Excuse me. Tax collection report, I'll sort of start at the bottom. Property tax, we're at 98.84% collected. This is all based on budget. Motor vehicle tax at 69.89. The two of those together give our current year taxes at 96.07. Delinquent taxes were at 92.01. Our category for late list penalty, we're above budget right now, so we're at 109.45% collected. When you look at the collection versus the actual levy, we're at 95.74%.
All right, questions on the tax collection report for February? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Let's move to the release refund report for February 2020.
Release refunds for February 2020, the report shows an amount of $7,145.06. We had $419.33 rebills, which give us a net release of $6,725.73. Refunds in the amount of $64.78, and our VTS refunds over $100 were zero.
Questions or comments on the tax release report, tax refund report? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to our next item will be the tax collection request to change the minimum tax bill to $5.
Okay, on September 3rd, 2002, Burke County Board of Commissioners adopted a resolution authorizing the tax collector to make adjustments for underpayments or overpayments and to set a minimum billing amount. Resolution basically had two parts. The first part authorized Burke County tax collector to treat small underpayments of $1 or less as paid in full. It also authorized that small overpayments of $1 or less were not to be refunded. This is all in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 105-357C. The second part of this resolution authorized Burke County tax collector not to bill taxes to taxpayers for amounts less than $1 or less. The general statute actually gives a range up to $5 is allowed, and that's under General Statute 105-321F. We are not requesting a change on the first part of the resolution. That's the small underpayments and overpayments. $1 is the maximum that the general statute allows. The resolution does reaffirm this. The requested change is for the second part, to increase the minimal tax bill from $1 to $5, the maximum amount allowed by North Carolina General Statute. This is due to increased cost in printing, insertion, mailing, which is postage, staff time to prepare and collect the bills, and other costs such as banking. This cost is around $450. Whenever you start putting soft costs together, it's really hard to get an exact number. And the amount increases dramatically when the bill goes delinquent. In other words, our cost to collect a delinquent bill is not even considered here in this $450. What I did was a little poll of neighboring counties. You can see that their minimum bill amounts were at $1, Caldwell's at $5, Henderson's at $5, Lincoln's at $1, and they're requesting an increase. McDowell's at $3, and Rutherford's at $1, and they're requesting an increase. Also wanted to make note that the quantity of these small bills has increased since implementing the gap billing. And gap billing is for the time period between when registration ends on a motor vehicle and you renew your registration. That by 105-330 General Statute creates a personal property bill that the county has to bill for. So what I went on here and just did a little bit of stats to give you an idea of what this really means. 2019, the bill's between $1 and $5. So we're 4,021 bills in that range. If we collected 100%, we would have collected $11,289.57. At the point when I made this last week, we had only collected a little over 6,000, which is a 53% collection rate. So we had $52,000 in delinquent taxes. So if you look at Table B, if we collected 100%, $11,289, and we had 4,021 bills at $450 each, it's costing us $19,444 to create these bills and collect them. That would be a loss of $8,154. If we look at Table C, there I'm taking what our current collections are minus the cost, which puts us at a negative $13,000. So that's sort of where I'm at on this. I'm requesting the board to increase this to $5. Now, this would affect our July billing whenever we send bills out.
All right, gentlemen, you heard Danny's presentations. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I do business with one firm that they did this a couple of years ago. They minus up or down on $5, it's added to your next bill, or if you overpaid, they take it away. but that's when you get a monthly bill. When you're dealing with taxes and you're billing once a year, it probably isn't worth it. It's gonna cost you about as much to try to get some of that money back, is my guess, but
We would not have that opportunity. We create a bill, we either create a bill or we don't create a bill. You can't hold the bill and add it to the next year's bill.
Well, Danny, do you think a lot of people who just are out to get the best deal will just start paying $3, $4 less on their money so they could take advantage of that? Or you think most
Okay.
is just an error in filling out their check, or what?
Okay, there's two different things right here going on. What you're talking about is a small underpayment, overpayment. That's $1. It cannot be any greater. What I'm asking for is not to bill a bill that is less than $5.
Oh, it makes sense. Something you can
So whenever what we're looking at here, say I've got that GAP bill, or I've got a bill for a utility trailer, and it's $2.49, then it would just go away, wouldn't be billed at all. Now, the first part of this thing is talking about a small underpayment, overpayment. If your bill's $100 and you write me a check for $99, we're gonna consider it paid in full. It's not affecting that part. All we're gonna do is reaffirm that part of the resolution. Am I making sense?
Oh, yeah, I bet
Okay.
you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Danny, hearing no questions or comments, and without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda.
Thank you.
And number 17 from the Tax Department is approval of agreement with Datamax for enforced collections.
Okay, this agreement has got a little bit of history with it. It goes back to 2012 and 2013, whenever we decided, or the state was going to implement tag and tax, or the VTS system. Prior to that, if you remember, you would go purchase your tag, and 3 months later you'd get a bill from the tax office saying, hey, you owe us $18 or whatever the bill would be. Okay, so the old, what we referred to as RMV system, was not a very good collection method. We'd have 80 to 85% collection rate. The rest would be delinquent and take you months and months to get it if you ever got it. So in 2012, in preparing for the VTS system, we went into contract with Datamax to do our delinquent collections after they got so old. And what we're after here is just to reaffirm this contract and give the county manager the authority to sign off on it.
Questions or comments? Okay, refresh me. I thought the state was taking care of that if you didn't.
They are on the new VTS.
On the new VTS, which started
in 2013.
In 2013, so.
We still have some old lingering bills around, plus.
That are 6 plus years or older?
Yeah.
Okay.
We still have some of those around, plus our personal property bills. We use this on our personal property bills also. Say like a manufactured home, a boat and motor, that would be your personal property. We do not use this on real property.
Okay, just personal property.
Just personal property.
Okay. How much do we have out there that's older than 6 years? I know it's a guesstimate.
I don't know that number.
Okay.
At the time of the audit, it's probably an average of about $35,000 a year. Not all of this would be personal, some of it's real, but that's the outstanding receivables from those years.
Okay.
So Danny, are these folks, I mean, are they doing anything?
Yes, this year, if you notice that Datamax has helped us collect almost $60,000.
How much? I'm sorry.
Almost $60,000 in 2019, and our cost has been $16,000. So it runs just a little over 25% when you average it out. Bills that are over 7 years old, they charge 50%. Bills that are 7 years or newer, it's 25% contingency.
Mr. Chairman, you've got up there on your chart, budgetary effect, it's blank. I'm assuming it has none.
Look at your handout.
This is already budgeted in the, in our current budget.
Look at your handout.
This one of those you don't pay unless they collect, is that the way it works?
Correct. Yeah, it's,
I fell down.
now, they offer different ways to do it. You can pay them up front for so much a letter, but we just felt that contingency is our better direction. If they don't have results, then we don't pay for any.
So they are making us money.
Yes,
Okay. And all we want to do is renew the contract.
renew the contract, yes, sir.
I'm clear. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. All right, move on to our items for decision. Our item number one is reassignment of animal enforcement duties, and that's going to be presented by the High Sheriff of Burke County, Steve Wisman. Come on in, Sheriff.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, the Sheriff's Office is asking that the reassignment of animal enforcement duties be removed from the Sheriff's Office, and we believe that the citizens of Burke County would be best served if animal enforcement was to be transitioned from under the direction of the Sheriff's Office to a civilian department under the authority of the county manager or whoever the county manager determines. I think we've saw that the animal advocates are a passionate and dedicated group of people. We see this as a win-win in that the Sheriff's Office can concentrate on protecting and serving the citizens, and this group could concentrate on protecting the animals. We provided three parts of that that I'll share with you. First is to transfer the current lieutenant in animal law enforcement to the Burke County Jail as a sworn lieutenant's position. Having a sworn lieutenant would provide the Burke County Jail with the ability to have a lieutenant on duty that would spread out over more days, evenings, and nights. The sworn jail lieutenant would serve warrants, assist in both local and state transport. Currently, our state transport deputy is working up to 7 days a week. It would also assist with the local transport and security of arrestees who are transferred to local hospitals for medical or psychological reasons or to Raleigh for forensic evaluations. Assist with training and perform other related jail duties requiring a sworn officer. As far as the new animal control group, we would take the remaining 3 animal control law enforcement deputies, and the Sheriff's Office would request that we retain 2 of those deputies. These deputies would be available to accompany the newly created non-sworn animal enforcement civilian officers within dangerous situations where their personal safety may be at risk. These deputies would be available to assist with investigation, prosecution of North Carolina felony animal violations when requested by judicial officials or the district attorney's office. When not accompanying the civilian enforcement officers, the deputies would serve warrants, subpoenas, juvenile petitions, and perform other related Sheriff's Office duties. These deputies would be solely under the supervision and authority of the Burke County Sheriff's Office and have no duty to investigate or enforce Burke County animal ordinances or misdemeanor North Carolina animal statutes. Thirdly, the new created non-sworn animal enforcement civilian officers' duties would include all investigations and enforcement of Burke County animal ordinances and misdemeanor North Carolina animal statutes. Their duties would include setting and monitoring of animal traps, seizing and transporting animals, providing 24/7 on-call service for emergency animal seizures where animal safety and well-being are at risk, and all other animal law enforcement related duties. These officers would be under the supervision and authority of the county manager or whoever the county manager deems to be the proper person, and not the Burke County Sheriff's Office.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard the sheriff's presentation, questions and or comments.
Mr. Chairman, comments, in looking at the request, of course, this is something that we've discussed. We had some discussion at our retreat on this matter, in looking and forward into the budget. I'm certainly in favor of the animal control coming under the auspices of the manager's office and working more closely with our animal services center. As I look at this request, Sheriff, it looks like basically a request for officers otherwise in the sheriff's office, and I'm open to hearing that, but I think just my position is that should be something we discuss at budget time, and not necessarily at this point, but if we can move forward with transitioning those officers that are already serving in animal control, if we can transition those to animal control in that same kind of fashion that you laid out kind of in number 3, that may be something that we could do prior to budget, but otherwise, I think most of this needs to be considered during the budget process. That's my take on it.
And the reason I even put that in there was that I hate for any officers to lose their salaries. And we're going to be requesting additional staff for the jail in the budget anyway. So we can start renting out beds and make that a revenue-producing jail. So that's the reason I included that in there. That would be one of the transitions that we would request in the new budget. So I put that in there just to provide you that information.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a comment or two. The first one is a question, though. Steve, do you know any city, town doing that now, that the sheriff is not totally involved, that's totally not involved? Excuse me.
Yes, sir. And in fact, the chairman may have those numbers. When we met about something else the other day, I don't know what it was. I think you may have looked and saw how many sheriff's offices have animal control. I think there's less sheriff's offices have animal control than do have animal control. And see, Burke County's the same way. It's not until the late 90s that Burke County Sheriff's Office started doing animal control. It was with civilian group. So yes, there's a lot of civilian, from my understanding, a lot of civilian animal control.
Well, the biggest thing you lose in doing that is the clout that a sheriff's badge carries, and it should. And people can be acting crazy, and a sheriff show up with usually uniform, whatever, they calm down. I don't know that, I know you're talking about taking 2 of the people and putting them on your force somewhere else, but to what extent and what length would we have to provide officers from some other means or develop the means for them to be officer for animal shelter? But the county would lose the impact of immediate recognition and you better behave yourself, the sheriff's here, or the deputy's here, whoever's here. So I think we have to consider that as part of the decision. It's tough. I don't think, part of the problems and the biggest complaints I get is simply that animal control, people who call about animal control and so forth, so on, sometimes it's the next day before anybody gets there, and that's the biggest point. Well, what we're going to do with that, how much worse would it be if you left it to an independent guy like Maynard Taylor? And with the sheriff having it, and maybe this is not a good example, but I'll use it anyhow. If you do have 4 or 5 backup calls on animal control, and you do have an officer who's not busy, he's just parked somewhere, or you could at least get somebody in a dangerous situation, you would have more help on the way or choices to move somebody than if somebody that had a two-member
Yeah,
entity.
And the reason I put that in there, these deputies, their primary duties would make sure that they would be available to back up the civilian animal enforcement officers, because there is some dangerous situations, there's no doubt about that. We do not want to leave them without law enforcement protection. We'll be there, and if we had 2 deputies just assigned to that, now obviously they won't be using us all the time, so they're going to do lots of other things. I think it all depends on the staffing that you put into the enforcement officers. Put enough staff and they'll get out there. I do want to say one thing about a lot of these complaints. People have no idea. They'll call in and file a complaint on a particular dog. They have no idea we're even there. We go and leave hangers a lot of times. If the dog we get there, there's food and water. We don't take the dog. There's nobody at home. They don't answer the door. We leave a hanger, say, we need to talk with you. And I know a lot of people, when you start looking into that, they had no idea a deputy was there. So there's a lot of those situations that you may be getting inaccurate data and that people don't know you're there. And it's like, we get this a lot. People want us to provide extra patrol. And they don't realize that if they're not sitting by the window 24/7, if a deputy goes by and does extra patrol, that we've done it. And so there's many times when we do extra patrol, people have no idea that we've been there. But I do think that you would need adequate officers to do the enforcement part, but we want to be there for you. If those officers feel intimidated and they feel like they need a deputy there that's armed deputy, we want to be there for them. Now, the difficulty is without having those people assigned to that is we have to prioritize calls. I've been out on calls. Last homicide I was out on, I think we had 11 pending calls. When you have 5 deputies and you got a homicide, it takes a bulk of those deputies to control the crime scene. We get there, what a lot of people don't understand is that we usually use the SBI to help us do crime scene investigation. Well, they require we do search warrants. So it's probably at least 2 or 3 hours you're sitting there. Now, those officers can't leave. They've got to keep the scene secure. I physically myself started answering calls. In a situation like that, if you don't have a deputy that's dedicated to help the civilian animal services, they'll be at priority 3, and you got to go back and answer all your priority 1 calls. People's fighting and cutting and screaming and trespassing. We got to answer those calls. Then we go to level 2. Then that'd probably be a priority 3 call. So I did think it was important that I put that in there to be aware that we want to provide the law enforcement service that you need. We would like to keep those deputies so we could do that. Another thing, the reason we're bringing it up now is it would help us to know what to request for the budget for next year, how many deputies we need, where they need to be. Although be a wonderful situation if we got full staff, we don't want to have full staff and then you say, no, you can't use those 2 deputies in that position. Now we're overstaffed 2 people. We got to riff 2 people. So we just like to have information now that if that's where you would like us to pursue, that we could start moving toward that direction. But we do want to provide these civilians with law enforcement protection when they're in the field.
Well, excuse me. The minor point probably is if we turn that over if we do a complete entity for dog shelter, then the people who are volunteers, et cetera, who is helping keep the cost down is likely just to get out of the business. And that question's never been answered. What impact does volunteerism have with our dog shelter? How many hours does it save? And probably with the 2 or 3 we have in the county that I'm aware of, they probably save us an employee apiece, just guessing, because I don't know the numbers. I don't know how many dogs they got, how many they pick up, how many they keep. But it would be interesting to know that figure before you jump into the fire, so to speak.
And that's why I said what I did at the beginning. I don't know a more passionate group of people than the animal advocates. If you want to get volunteers, they're probably the best people in the county to get volunteers. And I know they've gotten a lot of volunteer help, and that's great. And that's what I say. I think that they have a gift, a desire, a passion to protect and serve animals, and that would let us focus our services to protect and serve people.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I think, there's no way that we could keep this on the agenda. I'd say we need to move it to at least the first budget meeting to have a discussion on this, because this is pretty complicated. I don't see how we can move on this that quickly and get it done, July 1. That's a big ask, and I just don't see it, because you're talking about new positions and in a department that, this is going to be a little more complicated than, just throwing a few folks out there and saying, hey, go to it. I mean, I understand your position, but we got to look at, something that's going to be around for the next several years. And we got to look at the budget and how it affects it as well. So, I'd say you want to probably, I think it's a good idea, because we discussed this at the thing. I just don't want to make a snap decision because I want to know more about how it's going to impact the budget. The officers, what are we going to do with those? I mean, there's a lot to it. And so I say we need a lot more input before we can move forward. So I think that needs to go in the budget meeting.
Any other comments?
One thing, I know it'd be, you got about 5 months to do that. We were given 6 months to hire 37 people. You're hiring 2 or 3 people. You got 5 months to do it in.
These are going to be different rules and regulations. This is going to be something totally new. You've run a jail before, and so obviously you should know what you need and how you need it. This is a separate entity. We're talking about they're going to be under the county manager's purview, and so what does that look like? I mean, and it's not the number of employees, but we got to know what the language looks like. We got to know what the there's a lot of moving parts to it. So, I understand, the 37 in 6 months, but that's something you've done before. This is completely new. So that's what I'm saying. I don't want to rush something that's going to, that could adversely affect everyone.
I understand that, and but you're not reinventing the wheel. Now, you got a majority of counties do this. Civilians run it. So, I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of sheriff's offices that do not run animal control. And we'd be glad to assist you with getting information for you too.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think we have to wait till D-Day, to July the 1st, but I think the manager, the sheriff, animal services, everybody needs to come together and figure out, how can we make this work? How would the transition look like? I just don't think I agree. I don't think it's something we can do and vote on until everybody gets together and works out a lot of details.
No, we're not ready to vote on this. There's some details that have to be worked out. I agree with the concept. I think we all totally agree with it, and that's what we discussed in our budget retreat as to how we get to where we're at and see who we have to fill these positions. What kind of people are we looking for to fill these other positions so that you can get your positions back over? I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. I don't think we're ready to make that decision 2 weeks Tuesday. I think it's in the budget process. I want to make sure that when you ask for whatever it is in your new budget, that we understand what you're asking for. I think the county manager, and personally I do too, have some reservations about getting it ready for right now. It's just not ready. So I think we need to take a look at it a little bit further and, again, do a little bit more exploration of the other departments that we know are out there that kind of do this. And, again, we're going to plagiarize how some people do some things so that we can make it work for Burke County. I do appreciate the fact that you're saying you're willing to have your officers ready to go with a badge and a gun, when we need somebody there. And that will occur. And it's good to know that we'll have those ready to go. But I think I want this plan to be airtight as we move forward, so there'll be no reservations on anybody's part. So I think that needs to the collaboration between Caitlin and you and the manager and whoever else we need to bring in to do that in Margaret to make sure we get this right. And I think that's the way to proceed with it. So gentlemen,
Could I make one other comment?
yes, sir, you can.
One thing that we would like to do, though, considering the new county ordinance, if we're going to be asked to enforce those, we would like to be a part of the discussion with the county attorney and animal services.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the county manager. Our representative that normally attends that meeting and our backup representative, that both of them were on the firearms range that night, so they were not aware of that. But the county manager did send me that. We do have objections to some of that, and we do. I think the sheriff's office and North Carolina Sheriff's Association would object to some of those things and the constitutionality of those. So we would like to have input on that.
Yes, you're more than welcome to be there. Obviously, I was going to invite you in on that, or hopefully you thought I was going to invite you in on that. So, no, I don't think we're ready for this for a decision item. Does anybody disagree with me on that? I think it's just there's too many variables right now that we have to take a look at. So, Madam Clerk, I think we need to pull this off of decision items till we get more information back from the manager, because the manager had some reservations by even getting it ready soon, but I think if we work diligently on it, we can get a time for it. So any further comments or questions on that one? All right, Madam Clerk, you got your directions on that one? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, is there any other reports that need to come before us?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Going back to the jail, our discussion in the beginning, we've had a couple different figures. Could we get a true cost of what that jail costs? Equipment, furniture, of course we had the land, but the whole ball of wax. I mean, during the election process, I've heard every figure from 15 million to 22. What is the true?
15 yet.
What is the true cost of the jail? Once and for all, what is the true cost of the whole jail and equipment and whatever?
I can get it, and we're going to get it, because there's a difference between a construction cost and an operation cost, and that's been some of the
I'm not really interested in
Wait
the
just a minute until I finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There's a difference between the operation cost and the construction cost. What I want to get for y'all is the true figures for operations, like you want. You know, the operation cost, there's a construction cost, there's the cost for the equipment, like you said, and everything. So I want that myself, okay?
I'm not really interested so much in the operational costs. I'm interested in the cost of the building, the equipment. Of course, we had the property. The total cost of what the operational cost is going to be crazy. I mean, you hear the sheriff, he's got to have more jailers. I mean, that's going to be a crazy figure. I don't even want to go there right at the moment.
I don't think it's going to be a crazy figure, because we're already paying operational costs that we were paying at the confinement center and what we were paying at the uptown jail. But we need to know what that cost was for those two different entities. We was paying that cost and we was paying that cost. So we need to, actually, since we just moved into the jail, I think we'll be able to get that figure for you. So I was going to talk to Margaret and Brian after this meeting and say, we need to get that done right away.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
November
sir.
17th, regular meeting, cost of the government drive site, $15,600,000.
Oh, for the land?
No, not for the land, for the building.
That was what?
$15,600,000.
And where did that come from?
Where'd you get that from? What's it from?
From, I guess it came from Kay.
Okay, where'd you get it?
Well, let me look at it.
You have both of them on there.
And that's the number that I heard to start with, but.
And folks, this board needs to come together. It's awful. I was called a liar in the paper, which I resent. And I have the information here. And I don't want to put our finance officer in there. There's her figures she gave to me. It's her handwriting.
Pass it on down here, I want to see it.
I want it back.
I'll give it back to you.
These appear to be the minutes from November 17th, 2015, regular meeting, page 779,
2015? Okay.
2015. And it looks like there was a discussion on jail location and scope.
Commissioner Akeley, the furniture and fixtures and all of the equipment for the jail is in the $24 million budget. That, all of that is part of that number.
So the total budget for the new jail is $24 million.
Yes, sir.
When you say total,
Would you identify that is your handwriting for me?
Mr. Taylor, please sit down. I didn't authorize you to get up to go to her with that document. Come on back. Okay, you're out of order on that. Come on over here.
You're out of order now.
No, I'm not. I asked you to see your document. I looked at it. I gave it back to you. It presents somebody's handwriting on
Yes,
it.
and I said I would like to make sure before we leave. Maybe I didn't get that far. You cut me off. But anyhow.
No, I didn't cut you off. I asked you to see the paper.
Yeah, you cut me off.
Okay, and then I gave you the paper back. Okay. Thank you.
And I want the world to know that she did write it. There is one figure that's different on them. That figure was, we started at $73,000 per officer, and we reduced it to 51. And she called me later and said that wasn't sure that included all the fringe benefits. She'd have to get back to me. And you called me back and gave it to me, and I wasn't at the house. I'm not accusing you of anything, Margaret. It's just that if I tell you a chicken dip snuff, you can look under wing for a snuff box. I don't play those games. I don't stretch the truth. And to get accused of that is, well, I wouldn't say that. That wouldn't be proper. I'm sorry. But it's, you people are creating more calls to me and more opportunities for me and more for Wayne, because what you're saying on the radio is not true. When would Burke County go broke, Jeff? I asked Jimmy Jackman the other day. We bumped into each other. Hey, we ain't never been broke. Who said that? And it's just, and we can ask Madam Clerk. You can ask yourself. You brag about all the business you brought here. How many times have we had less than a 5-0 vote, Madam Clerk, on a good opportunity to expand and bring jobs to Burke County? Would you say it's 99% of the time or better? There ain't 3 commissioners on this board. It's 5. I could say a whole lot more, but I think you get the message.
All right, so any other reports need to come in front of us? All right, gentlemen, save the date of March the 24th at 9 a.m. That's a special meeting when we tour the old courthouse, and then at 10:30 a.m. is the Sally Port ribbon cutting ceremony. Also, don't forget Tuesday, March the 31st, the NCACC district meeting at Foothills Higher Education Center from 5 to 8, and dinner will be provided for you. Entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, all in favor? Madam Clerk, we stand adjourned.